Hopefully this works. So she seems perfect, like she's fell out of the mindfulness app and straight into your DMs. Charming, intelligent, radiating empathy like a ring light. She nods at your problems with the precise level of solemnity, dispenses advice like the therapist on Wi-Fi, and somehow makes you feel seen for the first time since your primary school assembly. Your mum loves her. Your mates think you've finally sorted yourself out, and you think you won the relationship lottery. 6 months later, you're parked outside your home, your own flat, rehearsing your alibi to the houseplants. You're scared to go in. Your memory feels like a browser with 48 tabs open and one of them playing guilt on loop. You apologize for the things that you can't recall doing, step over emotional landmines that weren't there yesterday, and watch yourself from outside yourself becoming a stranger in your own skin. Congratulations, you've met the shadow, not the poetic kind, the clinical kind, the unconscious kind, the unconscious shrapnel some people carry around with them like it's a designer handbag full of unresolved chaos. No neon warning sign, no danger personality sticker, just covert tactics, silent weapons, and you drafted into a war you didn't even know existed. Today, I'm pulling the fire alarm on 6, not the obvious screamers or plate throwers, amateurs. I'm talking about the elite operators, the ones who hug you with one arm and then rewire your reality with the other. The ones who look like healing but run on extraction. They don't stab your heart, they lease your mind and invoice you monthly. They'll present as caring, sensitive, exquisitely deep, while quietly uploading their emotional malware onto your hard drive. You'll think you're helping them heal. In truth, you're becoming the treatment plan, the therapist, and the bin. You don't fall in love, you get recruited. So buckle up. Apple Watch, it's about to name the archetypes, map the tactics, and hand you the antidote, because the most dangerous predators aren't the ones you hide from in the dark. They're the ones you invite in for tea, thinking they've come to save you. And by the time you notice the drip, you're already underwater. This infection doesn't come with flashlights or warning signs. It seeps in through channels you don't even know exist. Suddenly you're carrying bags you never packed, emotions you didn't create, and problems you didn't cause, reactions that were forged in someone else's childhood trauma factory. And without clocking it, you've been promoted from partner to human landfill. So congratulations, you're now the container for her psychological waste management system. But here's the trick. It dresses itself up as intimacy. She uploads her deepest fears, her childhood horror stories, her fragile little cracks in such a way that you feel honored, like you've been knighted by the Ministry of Vulnerability. You think you've been handed the holy grail of trust, but you've actually been handed the invoice, because she isn't sharing to connect. She's downloading to offload. Every confession is a data transfer. And the storage unit is your nervous system. And bit by bit, her anxiety becomes your constant background hum. Her depression, your morning commute soundtrack. Her triggers, your new personality test. Before you know it, your daily planner is just a crisis calendar built around her instability. And the worst part, the scam makes you an accomplice in your own colonization. You believe you're being supportive, but really, you're running her unpaid rehab center. You may mistake self-erasure for selflessness, and you get hooked on being needed while she gets fat on being rescued. That's the truth. That's the truth bomb. It isn't love, it's logistics, and you're the donkey in designer reins, parading her chaos while she claps from the front row. Psychologically dangerous women don't fight you directly. They outsource the battle onto your own head through projection. Think of it as psychologically fly tipping. She dumps her unacknowledged garbage onto your front lawn, then phones the council to complain about the mess. Welcome to Projection Matrix, a distorted funhouse mirror where you never meet the real her, and she never meets the real you, because not talking to you, she's talking to a twisted cartoon version of you that she drew herself. When she hisses that you're selfish, she's really describing her own hoarding of emotional oxygen. When she says you're emotionally unavailable, she's shoving her own Berlin Wall of intimacy issues onto your shoulders. When she insists you're controlling, she's playing hide and seek with her own inner dictator. Here's the kicker. Authentic communication becomes impossible because you're never actually discussing what happened. You're constantly on trial for who you are. Every conversation turns into identity theft. You're too busy defending yourself against false charges to notice the real crime, the slow demolition of your sense of self. And this matrix is self-feeding. The harder you fight to prove your innocence, the more guilty you look in her script. Your frustration at being misunderstood, evidence you've got anger issues. Your exhaustion from endless defense is proof you're emotionally distant. You're trapped in a courtroom where the judge, jury, and executioner are all wearing her perfume. And that's the Apple Watch warning label. When you're stuck defending your character instead of your actions, you're no longer in relationship. You're starring in somebody else's psychological puppet show. That's a fact. The most sophisticated form of psychological manipulation isn't the obvious kind. The screaming or throwing of plates, the Instagram meltdown with cryptic captions. No. The deadliest versions show up in silk gloves, and it's the woman who presents herself as a victim while quietly operating as predator. She has mastered the art of turning sympathy into a weapon, of using your protective instincts against her like you're a Trojan horse. She enters your life like looking fragile, delicate, like porcelain, with a few cracks. You think, oh, you've been chosen specifically, just chosen to repair. She shares stories of the past, trauma, and with the timing of Netflix drama, tragic childhood, cruel exes, and endless reel of how the world has wronged her. And you, in your masculine urge to protect and secure, to rescue, taking the bait, you mistake her performance for honesty, her rehearsed disclosure for trust. You feel special because she has left you bedazzled. She's let you into her, well, what you think is the real her. You don't realize that 100 men have been shown this exact same her. This isn't authentic vulnerability, it's tactical warfare. Every criticism you raise gets reframed as prosecution. Every boundary you try and set becomes abandonment. Every request for accountability is twisted into a further victimization. Step by step, as you invest more of your energy into helping her heal, the balance shifts. The person who seemed so fragile, so helpless, so desperately in need of protection, suddenly reveals herself to be armed to the teeth with psychological warfare. The victim becomes prosecutor. The wounded becomes the warrior. The helpless becomes the handler. And this is a disorientating flip because it violates the entire contract that you thought you'd signed. You didn't think you were entering into a courtroom, but suddenly you're standing trial. The woman you were trying to save now treats you like you're the perpetrator. The victim you were protecting is now the one prosecuting you for crimes you didn't commit. And the more you defend yourself, the guiltier you look in her carefully scripted narrative. But some women don't just play victim. They go further. They operate as emotional parasites. These aren't partners. They're not interested in building or sharing in growth. They want to host. They want to host, and they want your nervous system as a life support machine. They arrive cloaked in tragedy, presenting themselves as someone who would be brilliant if she could only heal from her own wounds, achieve her own goals, or overcome her own obstacles. And of course, you, being noble, loving, dependable, you believe you've chosen to be her savior. You invest your time, your energy, your very soul into healing someone who has no intention of getting better. Because here's the brutal truth. If she gets the better, the parasitic relationship ends. Her entire identity rests on you needing to be saved. So she ensures she is never truly saved. Every time you rescue her from the natural consequences of her own behavior, every time you solve the crisis she manufactured, every time you regulate the emotions she should be regulating herself, you're not helping her, you're reinforcing her dependence while draining your own reserves. And the cool irony is the parasitic never ends, it never gets full. Because the hunger isn't really about your love or your support. It's about the control. She doesn't need the solutions you provide. She needs the power dynamic, that power dynamic that comes with it. Being endlessly given to, well, you're giving it to her. You could pour everything into her day after day after day, and she'll still look at you with those eyes and say more, because her addiction isn't to healing. It's to feed. It's to feed off you. And if you think that's sophisticated, wait until you meet the master controller. The archetype isn't just dangerous, she's devastating. She runs with a dual personality. With the precision of a Swiss watch out in public, she's immaculate, the very picture of kindness, thoughtfulness, emotional maturity. With her friends, colleagues, even your family still sing her praises. She's the woman who rescues stray dogs, remembers birthdays, and looks like she's designed by a PR team. But behind closed doors, the mask comes off. The kindness collapses into criticism, and the emotional maturity curdles into manipulation. The thoughtfulness is replaced by relentlessness and control. And the most psychologically destructive part, no one sees it. The public version of her is so well polished, so socially bulletproof, that when you finally break and try to tell someone that what she's really like, they look at you like you're some mad lunatic. The mask is her weapon. It's not just her costume. It's a prison. Like she locks you in, and your complaints sound absurd because they contradict the flawless public image that she's engineered. The world thinks they're lucky to have her, while you're slowly suffocating in the reality that no one else gets to see. And that isolation is deliberate. It keeps you doubting yourself, keeps you trapped, keeps you maintaining the illusion of her perfection by never speaking of the truth. Because if you break the illusion, you become the villain in her carefully scripted story. This is the theatre of psychological warfare. The victim, who was never a victim. The parasite, who feeds off and never heals. The mask controller, who is two people in one. And you, what role do you play? The protector, the provider, the rescuer, the silent accomplice. The man who mistakes exploitation for intimacy, control for connection, and psychological colonization for love. It's deep. So stick with me. The women everyone else sees as wonderful as the same woman who makes your private life a theatre of misery. Out in public, she is immaculate, polished like a brand launch, flawless like a Vogue spread, dripping with the kind warmth that even makes your mother second guess her loyalty to you. But in private, it's a different channel entirely. Criticism delivered like emotional clockwork, emotional manipulation served with a smile, psychological control so subtle that you could barely notice the charms until you're too tangled to move. This is the mask controller. She weaponizes her public persona, and it's lethal. When you try to raise the curtain to her backstage behavior, she doesn't defend herself, simply points at her audience, dozens, maybe hundreds of admirers willing to testify on her behalf. To them, she's a saint. To them, she's solidarity and confinement. Silk and pajamas. For the most, well, it's you being unreasonable. You look a fool for bringing it up. Friends and family shake their heads and tell you that you're lucky to have her. They can't see what luck really feels like. Solitary exile in a house full of mirrors and masks that isolates you. When worse still, it conscripts you into her illusion. She expects you to maintain the illusion, to keep your frustrations hidden, to smile for the photos, to perform as a happy couple in her PR campaign. Your silence is part of her costume. If the mask controller is two women in one, the chaos generator is one in 12 different emergencies. That's right, 12. She can't tolerate calm because calm exposes her internal storm. Peace is suffocating, so she creates drama like a street magician pulling rabbits from a hat. There's always a crisis, always an argument, always some impossible emotional fire that you're expected to deal with and put out. Your sanity, minor issues, magnified into catastrophic explosions. A missed text message becomes a betrayal, a sigh becomes a disrespect, a neutral comment becomes a declaration of war. While you're running triage on today's manufactured emergency, you never have time to step back and notice the pattern. Chaos keeps you occupied, chaos keeps you distracted, and chaos keeps you hooked. For her drama isn't dysfunction, it's intimacy. She mistakes intensity for love, panic for passion, and you're left exhausted, your nervous system hijacked, your days dictated by her unpredictable weather system. Living with a chaos generator isn't living, it's surviving. And survival comes at the cost of your identity, your energy, and your peace. Then comes the boundary violator, the one who treats your personal space like an open plan office. To her, love means unlimited access to your time, to your energy, to your privacy. She starts small, turning up and unannounced, scrolling through your phone, making plans on your behalf. But these aren't violations in her script. They're declarations of devotion. I just love you so much. I had to, because it becomes the excuse for erasing your autonomy, one line at a time. And when you dare to push back, when you try to draw a line in the sand and say she weaponizes her guilt, your request for space becomes evidence of rejection. Your desire for privacy becomes proof you're hiding something. Your need for respect becomes a sign you're emotionally withdrawing. Each attempt to protect yourself gets twisted into an attack on her. And slowly, without even noticing, your world shrinks and you stop seeing friends like that she doesn't approve of. You abandon hobbies that she finds threatening. You adjust your speech to manage her choices, your very movements to avoid her disapproval. Your boundaries don't just bend, they dissolve until the only version of you left is the one she allows to exist. The gaslighter doesn't need drama or chaos. Her weapon of choice is reality itself. She erodes yours brick by brick until you don't know what's real and what's her remix of the events. She denies things that happened. She rewrites history in her favor. She insists your memories are faulty. Your perceptions are flawed. Your judgment dangerous. And every time you call her out on something hurtful she said, she insists she never said it. Every time you recall damaging action, she claims it happened differently. And when you notice this, the repeating pattern, she tells you you're imagining things. It's not just denial, it's distortion at its finest. Selective memory weaponized. She recalls every mistake you've ever made with forensic precision while conveniently forgetting her own cruelties. Over time, you stop trusting your own senses. You begin to lean on her version of reality because yours is crumbling and hers is the final insult. She casts herself as the reasonable one, the patient one, the woman putting up with your faulty perceptions. You find yourself thanking her for her patience. You're thanking her for her patience. She dismantles your sanity. And finally, the most blunt instrument of all of them, the emotional terrorist. She doesn't need subtly. She uses your love against you with the efficiency of a hostage taker. Every argument, every disagreement, every time you set a boundary, it becomes a negotiation conducted at gunpoint. And if you don't comply, she'll leave. If you don't cave, she'll hurt herself. And if you don't obey, she'll destroy your reputation. These threats aren't always explicit, don't need to be. Sometimes it's silent treatment, strategic withdrawal of affection, sudden manufactured crisis when you act independently. The message is always the same. Comply or suffer. Love becomes conditional on submission. Your care for her becomes the very lever she uses to control you. And before long, you're no longer a partner. You're a prisoner, keeping the peace, but out of love but not out of fear. Because with the emotional terrorist, the relationship itself is held to ransom. The message becomes clear. Comply or prepare for emotional warfare. The emotional terrorist is not interested in compromise, partnership, or growth. She's interested in leverage. She doesn't argue with you because she takes hostages. And the hostage is always the relationship itself. Every time you disagree, it comes as an unspoken ransom note. Step out of line, and she threatens to leave. Set a boundary, and she threatens to hurt herself. Challenge her behavior, and she threatens to torch your reputation. Sometimes the threats are explicit, but often they're not. A sudden withdrawal of affection, carefully staged breakdown, manufactured emergency, just when you start acting independently. Her message is always the same. Your freedom will cost you everything that you value. Your love and her becomes the very weapon used to control you. She makes you responsible for her happiness, her mental health, her stability, and while you're busy holding her together, you're falling apart. You receive no stability in return because the point isn't balance, it's control. Then comes identity theft, and she's just as ruthless. But instead of holding the relationship hostage, she holds you. Bit by bit, she replaces your authentic self with a cut and paste version that serves her insecurities. She doesn't kick down the door to your personality. She rewires it gradually, invisibly, until you can't tell what yours was and where it was installed by her. It starts with subtle discouragement, a raised eyebrow when you see a friend she doesn't like, a pout when you mention a hobby she doesn't understand, drama when your energy goes anywhere but her. You begin to edit yourself to avoid the fallout. Over time, your life reorganizes itself around her preferences. Your social circle shrinks, your activities narrow, your speech and thoughts, even your own tone changes. When you question the erosion, She reframes it as love. She's not controlling. She's helping you become a better man. The manipulation masquerades as improvement. What you don't see is that the better version of you is not what she's getting. She's creating just a servant to her psychological needs. By the time you wake up to this, you're already a shadow wearing her fingerprints. The recovery prevention agent is even more insidious because she doesn't just steal your identity, she sabotages your attempts to get back. She unconsciously knows that if you heal, if you grow, if you get strong, her control evaporates. So she works, often without knowing it herself, to keep you stuck. She discourages therapy, dismisses personal development, and undermines the very positive change with carefully designed crisis. Try to book a session, suddenly she needs you urgently. Start a new habit, she finds a way to trigger your old patterns. She presses the exact buttons that drag you back into the version of yourself that she can manage. It's cruel because it targets your progress. The very steps you take to heal are the steps that she sabotages most. And she'll tell you it's love. She'll present it. Her sabotage is protecting the relationship. She'll make you feel guilty for outgrowing the very dynamic that's destroying you. But make no mistake, this isn't love. It's psychological handcuffing dressed as loyalty. Most men miss these early signs, not because they're stupid, but because they're looking in the wrong place. They expect obvious red flags, screaming, cheating, violence. But the most dangerous women don't announce their toxicity. They normalize it, slowly, gradually. They make the abnormal feel familiar until your reality is warped beyond recognition. And the warning signs are there if you know where to look. The first is speed of intimacy acceleration. She pushes for deep connection, exclusivity, even major life decisions at a pace that feels like passion, but is really psychological urgency. She needs to lock you in before you have the chance to evaluate her character. The second is isolation. She doesn't forbid you from seeing your friends, but family outright. That's too obvious. Instead, she makes those connections emotionally expensive. Hurt feelings, sulking, passive-aggressive. Every time you invest in someone else, she manufactures a cost until you stop paying the price. The third is reality negotiation, not outright gaslighting, but at first, but gentle reinterpretations of events that always favor her narrative. You start doubting your instincts, and by the time the real gaslighting arrives, you've already outsourced your perception of reality. Once you're in, the contingency plan spreads. Psychological toxicity doesn't stay contained, it colonizes you. Emotional states are contagious, and mirror neurons don't discriminate between healthy connection and a manipulation. At first, this feels like intimacy. You begin syncing with her moods, her rhymes, her storms. You start interpreting events through her lens, adopting her emotional vocabulary, absorbing her categories of meaning, and soon enough, you're no longer responding from yourself. You're echoing her. The infection deepens until her chaos becomes insidious from your responses, and you mistake this for growth. You tell yourself you've become more sensitive, more emotionally aware, and more connected. In reality, you become less yourself, more dependent, and more colonized, and it feels like love, but it's actually assimilation. This sets the stage for the most dangerous trap of all, the trauma bond, the addiction of intensity masquerading as intimacy. And she creates highs and lows, crises that generate unbelievable stress, followed by relief that makes you feel grateful for the things that you should never have to be happened in the first place. Relief becomes mistaken for love. The unpredictability of affection becomes a slot machine you keep pulling. Shared intense experiences, even manufactured ones, become proof in your mind of a special connection. And when the bond locks in, you start to believe that the difficulty of leaving is proof of depth of love. The intensity of your attachment, the fear of losing her, the inability to imagine life without her. They all feel like evidence of value, but they're not. They're symptoms of addiction. Real love doesn't destabilize, it secures. Real love doesn't shrink you, it grows you. Real love doesn't addict you, it liberates you. And yet, the arsenal isn't finished. Many of these women wield social proof as a weapon. They create the entire ecosystem of friends, allies, and online personas that echo their narrative and invalidate yours. They manage impressions like politicians, constructing public images so flawless you doubt your own memory before doubting theirs. On Instagram, you're the perfect couple. At dinner parties, when she's the perfect partner. And when You complain, you sound ungrateful, unstable, unreasonable. She even recruits your family into her narrative. Suddenly, you're isolated in your own life. Everyone else believes the story that she's written, and you're living the reality that no one else will acknowledge. This trap tightens with financial entanglement. At first, it's shared expenses, joint accounts, normal relationship steps. Then it's shared debts. You're on the hook for commitments that you then didn't even secure. Her comfort at your expense, lifestyle inflation that requires your income just to maintain. Every step deeper into the financial web makes escape more expensive. Sometimes she even sabotages your career, discourages opportunities, and creates crises that derail your growth, but not because she wants you poor, but because dependence is control. And if through all of this you dare rise, dare to heal, or dare to escape, she escalates into recovery sabotage, minimizing your concerns, reframing your self-care as selfishness, manufacturing crisis when you're about to attend therapy or reconnect with supportive friends, using your own healing language against you, pathologizing your growth while painting her sabotage as support. The sophistication lies in the disguise. She'll tell you she wants you to change while undermining every change you attempt. And here lies the fundamental truth. Most psychologically dangerous women aren't crackling villains plotting in basements. They're unconscious. They operate from wounds, from shadows, from pain that they refuse to face. The unconscious harm is still harm. They don't need to mean it for it to destroy you. And the more awake, empathetic you are, and the more aware you are, the more vulnerable you become. Your empathy becomes the weapon. Your love becomes the hook. Your willingness to understand becomes the very tool used to colonize you. Protection then isn't about paranoia. It's about disarmament. It's about noticing when the relationship drains you instead of feeding you. Intimacy feels like invasion, when vulnerability feels like strategy. It's even about keeping boundaries, even when boundaries are framed as unloving. And above all, it's about recognizing this. You cannot heal someone who doesn't want to be healed. You cannot love someone into wholeness. You cannot sacrifice yourself into saving someone else. Someone else is determined to be broken and remain broken. The women worth your time are not the ones who shrink you into make themselves bigger, not the ones who drain your energy to fuel their dysfunction, not the ones who weaponize your empathy against you. The women worth your time are those who take responsibility for their own shadows, who do work on themselves, who bring consciousness rather than chaos to the table. The path of the protection is choosing discernment over delusion, seeing the difference between genuine vulnerability and manipulative victimhood, between authentic need and parasitic demand, between love that liberates you and love that colonizes you. Trust your instincts even when they contradict the curated image someone else presents, because the most dangerous predators don't come with warning labels. They come disguised as salvation. And if this breakdown has lit patterns for you in your own life, then press that subscribe button, because there's plenty more where that comes from. Because the greatest act of self-preservation is recognizing that true care builds you up. It never breaks you down, not from the inside out.